Hi everyone, this is Katie from Moonflower Moments. I'm going to share with y'all today my May memories and what a good May it's been, and I'm also going to update you on my tree journal. So if you're not familiar, because you're new to my channel, I pick one tree per month to study in depth, and after working with it for a month and doing various readings and pulling from various reference materials, I take the time to sit down and synthesize all of that information to come up with my own symbolic and metaphysical properties, so that, if I need to work with a specific energy, I know exactly which tree to use as my guide. So I'm going to share my work with the Southern Redcedar as well. So to start off, I'm going to look at what the overall energy was predicted to be for my Wheel of the Year reading. So every July I do a reading with the Wheel of the Year, and these were my two cards that were projected as my monthly energy for this. So I pulled the Sun and I pulled Six of Cups. So I think this is a really beautiful depiction because for those of you who don't know, I am a teacher. So this year I taught students in 12th grade that I had previously taught in 9th grade. So it's been a beautiful journey watching them grow up. So I was definitely stuck in that nostalgia route. I think that, like, as cheesy as it sounds, when you see kids about to graduate, you can't help but remember all of the memories you had with them. And since we've had the depth of a relationship of 4 years, it was really beautiful to reminisce and to recollect and to share memories together. So Six of Cups, which I do consider to be a nostalgia card, definitely ruled the beginning of the month for me. And then we came into graduation, and I think that's where the sun really comes in. So it was a beautiful thing to watch my babies graduate, like I said, after 4 years, to see that triumph, to see them self-actualize. Many of them are going to really prestigious colleges. So I think that these two cards that I pulled very well represented that time frame for me. So after graduation, one reading that I do is I pull some cards asking myself, what am I supposed to learn from this experience or from this group of children? And this time I got the reverse Six of Swords. And so it really was a gut punch to me to stop running. So I think my entire life I have shied away from making personal connections with people because I tend to be pretty deeply empathic. And so I put up really heavy boundaries and very heavy walls, and sometimes it's gotten in the way of me engaging with the place in its present capacity. And so to receive reverse Six of Swords was just one of the most incredible things for me. And I think it really came to sum up my journey this month in general, to stop running, to set the roots, and to realize that it can just be good. You don't have to be waiting for the other shoe to drop. It can just be a good experience. So I did pull that as one of my major energies for the month. I did have another stalker card too, which I think we're in the middle of that cycle, so I can give you an update next month on it. But my other stalker card was definitely Seven of Swords. So I pulled this. This is the funny little lizards tarot. It's one of my new ones. I'll show you more cards in a second. But I pulled it from here. I had a friend do a really in-depth reading for me. She pulled Seven of Swords for me. I got it at least 3 more times that I can remember. Now, fortunately, alongside getting Seven of Swords, I also was getting a lot of imagery about protection. So this is Terra or Tara. If I'm saying that wrong, please let me know which one it is. I should have looked it up before, but I record off my phone, so I can't stop in the middle. So I got this particular goddess, and within the workbook, it discusses how she is well known for protecting her people and for looking after them through trying, difficult times. So even though I received the Seven of Swords quite a lot, and I did have some situations this month where, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I'm just gonna say straight up, I did get scammed out of some money. It was very unfortunate, but everything got recovered. I did experience that protection a long while. So this month wasn't as straightforward as last month's. I think it is the shifting nature of Gemini and Taurus that, at the beginning of the month, Taurus was pretty steady, and then we come into Gemini and it's like, okay, we have a lot of things that we're working through and dealing with and handling. But I'm happy to at least see that protection pops up most of the time. So for that reason, that was my word of the month, is protection. To remember that even when I'm going through difficult circumstances, I don't have to focus on the fact that it's difficult, but there are some underlying protections that I have. I do have a little nest egg. I have resources. I have people that I can call on. So even though some negative things happen to me, I still have that safety net around me. So this is my overlook for the month. So this is my planner. And as you can see, we have, for my standout decks, Fifth Spirit, Klimt, Terra, Botanical, Aztec, Goddess, Somnia, and Druid Craft. I already covered with y'all why Goddess was appropriate for me this month, and also Terra, but I'm going to walk you through the other ones and show you some cards from, some other cards from Goddess and Terra as well. So the first one that really was a standout deck for me was Fifth Spirit. This deck I received, I think it was like, I got it maybe the first or second day of May, so it is a new deck to my collection as well. This was the exact deck that I needed at the beginning of the month to help me deal with all of the nostalgia that I was facing. So it really is such a clean reader because of the way the pips are depicted. I'm obsessed with this deck. And so for that reason, when I was going through these very heavy feelings of nostalgia and not really knowing what to do with it and not really knowing how to handle it, I really did relish in the fact that this deck gave me clear, concise answers and helped me through those situations. So in particular, I did receive the moon one time this month. I really love this card because you can see that like the cypress trees are really deeply rooted into this swamp. So it let me know that I was holding on to some feelings that I needed to let go of. I also got the Hermit from this deck too, which we're going to see if it pops up. And I really enjoyed the messaging for the Hermit because it did remind me to go within and to consider all that I was putting out into the world. So instead of just responding off the cuff because I was going through some emotional things, it reminded me to sit down and take some time and contemplate before just, I guess, just sharing my honest thoughts. Basically not telling me to filter myself, but essentially like asking myself, do I really mean to say that? So Fifth Spirit was an invaluable deck for me because of how clearly it wrote. I got some really good readings with it. I used it more at the beginning of the month than the end of the month, but I think that this is going to be one that comes back around to me, and I'll probably use it in winter because of the white space. The other one that I really enjoyed was Klimt. So I only did 1 or 2 readings with this, but the couple that I did really stood out to me entirely. I always read with this deck in Gemini season. It tends to be where it fits for me because of the way that it's angulared and the way that I guess the colors remind me a lot of the sun. So it is on par that I brought this out during this time period. But I received from this deck the sun. And so I got this the day before graduation, so it really did remind me that, hey, when I'm hanging out with my students tomorrow and I'm celebrating in their success, like, don't forget to hug them and don't forget to be present in that moment and in that joy. So Klimt was my reminder to take a breath and to acknowledge what is around me. And even if things are busy or feeling very chaotic because it's the end of the year, it's time for me to be present with the ones that I care about the most. I had already shared with y'all why Terra was such an important deck for me. This is Terra Botanical. You can buy it on Etsy and it's still relatively cheap. I think it's only like $35 for an indie deck, so that's a win-win for me. But I always relish in this deck. It is my heart, it is my home. If you want to see me really go into detail about this deck, I will have a flip through coming up soon, or rather a walkthrough, because I am going to sit down and do a really in-depth discussion of each of the cards. But Terra always helps me through those monumental reasons. I think it's important for you to have a deck that you use during specific times of your life to help you through transitions, to help you through ritual work. And this is, of course, the one that I always go to after those big moments. Next is going to be Aztec. So usually after the students leave, I tend to take a lot of time preparing for the next year. But because I've taught all of the courses that I'm going to teach before, I really didn't feel like that mass rush during the last 2 weeks to work on curriculum or anything like that. So I had the opportunity to really visit with my friends and engage in a lot of social activities. And this deck was something that I used a couple of times before I went out, a couple nights in a row. And 2 different times I received the Queen of Wands. So it did remind me that even though I sometimes get in my head and don't feel like I'm a particular leader, that I can be seen as one, and I can have fun and I can engage with other people and just be really creative and very social. So it was a reminder to me that the way that I see myself is not always the way that other people see me. And I love the Queen of Wands. So this is the Aztec Tarot. This one is another indie deck that is very, very cheap. You can get it on Etsy. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but I think it was like $40. The cardstock is amazing. And this is my second month showing up in my monthly favorites. So I think that you know it's a special one to me. I already shared with y'all why Goddess was important to me, but I'll go ahead and share a few cards just in case you hadn't seen this. I know that everyone comes to YouTube at different times in their life, so even though this was popular before, it might be your first time seeing it. So the Goddess Tarot, essentially for the majors, goes through various goddesses from around the globe. It's definitely a very female-centric deck, and when I'm trying to tap into my feminine power, this is something I use a lot. So Goddess Tarot, another very cheap deck. This one's mass market. I think you can mostly get this one for like $20. And it's very worth getting if you ask me. Very clean reader. All right, so with school letting out, I had a little bit more time to work on some creative endeavors and think about some content that I want to come on with this channel. And so I used the Druid Animal and Plant Oracle to help me process that. So I have the two decks mixed in. So I got the Clover one day, and for this particular deck, you actually have to look into the guidebook in order to discern the meaning because there aren't any keywords, as you can tell. So you have to go into the guidebook, which is really well written. You receive like a lot. Let me move the deck over here so you can see. You receive a lot of information for each card. So you have the keywords here, the full write-up. You have upright meaning, reversed reading, and then you also have like some historical context of the card as well. So instead of just, I've been really thinking a lot about spreads and how I build them and more creative ways to engage with the cards. And so instead of just thinking like wisdom, health, good fortune, and pulling a tarot card for each of these, what I did is I read through the entry until I found like a word or a phrase that stuck out to me. And the one that I picked was, every so often, a hazelnut will fall and the salmon will crack open the nut and feed on it. And like that really just got into my mind because I'm like, how can a salmon crack open a hazelnut? So I ended up doing a reading through that, you know, basically asking how can a salmon open up the hazelnut? And I really enjoyed my answer because even though you think that it's going to be like playful, tarot always has a way of like hitting you with the truth that you need to hear just innately. And so it was more of a playful reading, but I ended up getting a really good experience from it. So I used the Druid Craft Plant and Oracle to kind of play around with different spread ideas. So another thing I've been doing is I've been reading Margaret Atwood's Cat Eye. And if you're not familiar with Margaret Atwood, I'm going to keep it short because she's my favorite author. I could go around forever. But essentially, she is an author from Canada. She usually writes like postmodernist, like feminist fiction, but a lot of her lines are really like gut punchers. So for example, there was one line at the beginning of the story. Let me see if I can find it. In my dreams of this city, I'm always lost. So she'll conclude like big chunks of text with these lines that are incredibly heart-wrenching. And so what I've been doing is taking those lines and I've been making spreads out of them with Somnia. So I will have a video about this in the coming months because I do consider it to be like very shadow worky. So I've been pairing that book with this deck, and whenever I'm in the reading chair up on the top floor and I just come across a line that I feel like would make a really good reading, I pull out Somnia. So I know that Krista Chronicles pairs like tarot decks with video games. This is definitely one of my ways that I pair decks with books, is I consider the tone of the book. And in the case of Margaret Atwood, she's very melancholy. And so I pull a deck that happens to remind me of that. So I will have a full video coming on this, so I don't want to give too much away. So you can watch that. That'll be coming in the next like month or so. I also used Forest of Enchantment, I don't have that with me right now because it's downstairs, to do my nursery rhymes, decks, and spreads. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for that in the description box below if you would like to see another way that I built spreads that was kind of a unique process for me. So in terms of new decks, like I had already mentioned, I got the Fifth Spirit. I already showed that one in detail. The Funny Little Lizards, the Voyager Tarot, and then 50 Plants That Heal. So did I do great on my low buy month? Not at all. Did I buy really great decks? Yes, I did. So I'm going to go ahead and let that be what I say for that. So I already showed the Fifth Spirit, but I'm going to go ahead and show off the Funny Little Lizards. So the funny little lizards, you can probably guess from its name, primarily focuses on lizards. I've been really attracted to this deck since I saw it on Kickstarter, but I didn't want to pay the money at the time for it, even though I think it is like really reasonably priced. I got this for $30 and it is an indie deck, and that includes like shipping as well. So I'm going to leave the link below if you're interested in it. So essentially each and every single card matches the tarot imagery with a particular type of lizards. So I think it's a really incredibly well done deck in that way, because if you go to the guidebook, which really is the star of this show, you have like 2 of Wands here, you have the name of the lizard, you have a fun fact, you have the keywords, and then you also have this right here that very clearly connects the imagery of the card to the gecko itself, or the lizard itself. I also really like that the suits are designed very intentionally to where there's a particular symbol for each suit. So all of the cups have eggs, and all of the swords have branches, and she explains here like why she chose branches to represent the swords, etc., etc. So I've been lusting after desert illuminations for a really long time, and so I think that this deck kind of fills that need for me. I think in its kind of like whimsical nature, but also because of the color palette. So even though I am going to buy desert illuminations when it finally comes mass market, which I think should be like next year or even this year, I think I'm okay right now, and I'm not going to be like willing to pay the out of print crazy prices because I have the color palette of this. So that is the funny little lizards. The next deck I got was the Voyager Tarot. So I'm actually really incredibly impressed with not only the deck, but also the guidebook. I'm going to show you the guidebook first. So the reason I bought a vintage copy is because I hear that the guidebook is really hard to get, and I managed to score this guidebook and the deck for $34 off of ATV Tarot on Etsy. They have really great deals. But for every single card, you get a description. I really like how the 7 of Worlds, which is the 7 of Pentacles, they connect it back to the Chariot. So they use numerology between the majors and then also the minors to help explain the minors. And then you have like at least, 2.5 pages for every single card. Some of the majors even have more. So very impressed with that. I've been using it every time that I read, and that definitely says something because I quite frankly sometimes get a little bit too impatient for guidebooks. But I've been very much enjoying it. It's my first collage deck. So even though on camera it's kind of difficult to see with these like sage greeny kind of like tan colors with the white font what the keyword is and then what the title is, you definitely can see it better in person. I hear that a lot of people become overwhelmed with this collage deck because there is so much going on in every card. I find it helped me to focus on one symbol, and so that's what I did. I focused on one symbol, and I looked at the color palette of each card as well, just to get an overall feel for what kind of colors were involved, because I think that those colors were picked intentionally. And so the Voyager Tarot is my first collage deck. I'm happy that this is the one that I decided to get, and I promise you this will be popping up in other monthly favorites. The next deck that I got actually isn't even a oracle deck or a tarot deck, but it's more of a reference deck. So it is called 50 Plants That Heal, and I got this from like Home Goods Marshalls, which is like a discount store, for like $10 yesterday. And I've used it a couple of different times with great success. So on the back, you have these really beautiful images that I just have a strong feeling are going to look excellent next to Terra Botanical and like Slavic Legends. I have a lot of decks that are outlined with black. I think this is going to go with. But then on the other side, you have all of this reference information. So you have a general description, you have the benefits, and you have the methods. So what I've been doing is essentially mining for key phrases. So I can see here that arnica is used as a remedy for bruises. So I might like pull a question, like or pull a card that asks myself like, what is bruised in my life right now? So I would mine this looking for specific words that stick out to me and use that to build tarot spreads. So that was 50 Plants That Heal. I'm sure I'm going to have more to say about this next month once I actually put what I just said into more extensive practice. But even if I don't end up using it for tarot and I just use it as, pulling a card and learning more about plants, I do love the herbalism side of plants as well. So I think that would still be worth it for me. All right, so I'm going to segue into my tree journal. So I have shown my tree journal before on my channel, and I'll leave the link below to my playlist explaining the loblolly, the live oak, water oak, and mulberry, since those are the ones that I've covered. But today I'm going to talk with you about the Southern Red Cedar. So I think that this is going to be more of a meandering discussion, and the true nature of like Gemini season, I feel like right now I'm absorbing a lot of ideas from around me, and so it's going to take me a little while to process exactly what the Southern Red Cedar had to teach me. So usually I start over at the beginning of every month, but I think with this particular tree I'm going to work with it for like another week or so because it's more shifty and I think it has a lot to share with me. So I did what I always do, which is I took a sample directly from the tree or the plant that I'm working with. And for the opening reading, this was one of the times that I got Seven of Swords as well. And so I don't know if this was pulling from the cedar because I wasn't sitting directly below it when I did this reading, though I did try to touch this plant to try to get to kind of use the plant as a guide, or if it was just like an overall description of my life at that time. But I did receive Seven of Swords, Knight of Wands, and Queen of Pentacles. So I knew at the beginning of the month that I might be facing some shifty circumstances, but I would have to power through it with the Knight of Wands and know that there are people around me to take care of me with the Queen of Pentacles. So then I got a little bit more into the actual reference information about the Southern Red Cedar. So I think that one of the more interesting things about it is that even though it's called the Southern Red Cedar, it's actually a juniper tree. So I primarily focused my studies on that. And if you ask me, it kind of looks like a little Christmas tree. So it's this one down here at the bottom. And while this isn't like a perfect description of what it looks like, it does have this conical shape that I show in the sticker. So what I learned about it to initially start off my month is that, you know, around the Gulf Coast, it inhabits the space between tidal marsh and the pine flatwoods, which is therefore the place that I'm living at right now. And so I was really intrigued by this because essentially the space between the marsh and then the pine woods is not a very large space at all. And so the demographic area or the native range of this particular tree is really, really slim. So I knew immediately that I'd be working with a tree that is kind of the entrance to a liminal space for me. And I think that that theme carried on throughout. So after I sat down and did some like research on the physical characteristics, I brought in some reference materials from Cunningham's Encyclopedia and then also Plant Witchery. And these were the initial things that I had found out about it. So it has the powers of protection, anti-theft, love, exorcism, and health. It also protects, has the power of protection, opening the doors between realms, and purification. So you can see that protection popped up twice here, which I had already shared with you at the beginning of my video was a relevant thing because I did get scammed this month, though I got the money back. I did feel as if I needed the protection that was available around me. So I definitely kept Terra on my desk for a really long time because I felt like I needed to engage with this goddess, whether in a metaphoric sense or in a real sense. And so I did have a couple of opportunities to where it didn't just feel like the tree was trying to tell me to keep this in mind, but also everything else around me. But I mean, there is a reason, I'm sure, that I picked this tree to study during during May anyway. I didn't know anything about this tree at all. So the fact that I picked it and it aligned up with all of this stuff, I think that's a synchronicity that you can't really ignore. So when I sat down to do my reading, I found a tree. A little baby sapling was only like 2 feet tall, and it had a couple other little baby saplings next to it that were about 1 foot tall. So I'll put images of that on the screen. And I sat down with my picnic blanket and I pulled some cards to represent the red cedar. Now, usually when I pull cards, what I do is I come back to my desk and I'm able to come up with like a list of keywords to describe what that tree meant to me. And I think I said before that the Southern Red Cedar, or the juniper tree as it's known, or the Southern Juniper, it really was something that was kind of like this flower to me. So it wasn't something that was straightforward. It's something that is more of a meandering process. So I don't think I'm quite yet ready to come up with these concise keywords yet. And I might not ever be, but it did teach me really overarching thoughts that I wanted to share with you. So as I sat down to do my reading, I asked this red cedar, you know, I lay before you. And what I received essentially is this, which is time space, as is traditionally known as like judgment. And so I knew that when I was opening this reading, essentially I'm coming to this red cedar and I'm this particular person that's searching for a higher purpose, but my eyes focused in on this protractor that is in this man's hand. So instead of just going with the flow and intuitively feeling my way through all of these really divine experiences or synchronicities that are happening around me, I want to measure them. And I think that that's true to who I am as a person, that I really do want to understand why. And so I need to understand, you know, when I'm at these liminal spaces, when I'm about to jump into these portals to other dimensions, when I'm about to meditate or divine, I really do like to understand like why this is something that works. And so this was a representation of me going into the reading. And then I asked it, you lay before me. And when I asked it, you lay before me, this leaf fell directly in front of me. So I'm going to pull it up so you can see it a little bit closer. So it has brown here, it has green, it has yellow, it has a little bit of red, but it also has like this bit of decay here that's like raised. So it feels like something's actually on the leaf. So I went ahead and preserved it as best as I could, so that way it would stick with those colors. And I really found that I did pull a tarot card along with this position, but this leaf and this card went together. And you can see that it lays before me the ability to be a seer, or the fact that it is a seer. And so it was calling on me to look into this leaf and to not see all of these individual parts, but instead to see it all. And so even though it's a kitschy phrase, I think sometimes the sum is greater than its parts, and sometimes I forget that. I'm a very analytical person, so I want to look at everything in its parts, but I need to recognize that sometimes the sum of something, the entire cycle of nature, or the entire cycle of a leaf decomposing, is more important than understanding all of the little individual parts. Or even if I do understand all those individual parts, I can't get lost into the details if I want to embrace this sort of seer-like energy and really deepen my practice. So another thing it wanted to teach me is that I need to see beyond the surface. So, you know, like I said, I spend a lot of time looking at the surface, picking it apart, but it wants me to be aware of the illusions and the delusions around me, and that even though the idyllic sands could stretch in front of me, so like a beach could stretch in front of me, just because something looks appealing doesn't mean that it's going to lead to something. It could lead into nothingness. So the concept of all that shines is not bright. But that also brings in the next card that I pulled for it, which was Purity and Two of Wands. So the concept of this is that I think a lot of times as readers, we start setting these rituals into motion where, you know, we have to sit down and have the right candles, and we have to have the right oils that we put on ourselves, and we have to have the mood lighting right before we sit down and read. And I'm someone who's very rigid about entering in to the divination space, to where I'm not someone who just likes to whip out the cards. Like, I do have a routine behind it. And I think that one of the things that it wanted to remind me of is that that's something that I can step away from. So even though those rituals are important because they help me to get into the right headspace, I don't need those rituals to participate. I can look at what's deep inside of me, and I can tap into a sort of internal purity, because it's an internal state of mind, it's not external. So I think that the biggest thing that was really taught to me is that no matter where I am, I can connect to the flow of energy. I need to stop being so overly analytical and instead really jump into that divination process and go with the flow, and not be so worried about why it works, but just trust in the fact that these things do. And, you know, I'm coming on here and you're probably like, why do you have a tarot channel if you don't believe it works? Of course that I believe it works. I just think that when you receive certain cards and then certain things happen in real life, it really does have an uncanny feeling. And I believe in it. I truly do. But sometimes it's easy to take, let's go over here. It's easy to take this Seven of Swords and tell yourself, oh, it's going to be a month of expansion for me. It's going to be a month of challenges for me, a month of, you know, mental challenges, since 7 represents challenges, etc., etc. And it's easy to kind of downplay. But then you have various experiences that really do highlight the meaning of this card for you. And at least for me, in my experience, you know, I do struggle with wanting to know why. And so the Southern red cedar is to teach me that I don't need to know why. I just need to trust in the process and trust in my own abilities, and to not water down the card meanings, but to see them for what they really are. So it goes back to that idea of purity is an internal stance, not external. I don't need all of the things. I can just trust my own self. So that really is the essence of what the Southern Red Tree, or Red Cedar, had to share with me. I've been thinking that for next year, I'm going to continue on with the trees, or I just bought a book very recently that goes over Louisiana wildflowers, so I might start tapping into that, but I don't want to have two practices running at once and therefore dilute my ability to study one of them. So I think overall, when it comes down to it, May has been a really good month. It very much started out to where at the beginning of the May, I was focusing on that nostalgic feeling. But then as the month has gone by and my students graduated and I was able to have a good few really strong memories with my friends, I was able to step into more of that airy work that I like to do here and really get into like the decks for quartz, the reading table reset, my nursery rhyme decks and spreads, which was my favorite video that I filmed this month. And so I expect that the rest of Gemini season is going to treat me the same, that I will be engaging with these new ideas. And I need to recognize that, you know, I don't necessarily have to know everything immediately. I can take the time to process everything as it comes to me. So yeah, I'm ready for June to hit. And June is my husband's birthday month, same with my mother's. They're born in the same week. So I think that I'm going to have a lot of really good things to share next month in terms of memories. So I thank y'all so much for being here, and I hope that y'all have a wonderful day. If you want to check out my other tree journal updates, I'll leave them in my description box below. And they are labeled to where if you don't want to see the monthly reflections, you can just skip through right to the tree journals. So thank y'all so much, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.